Welcome, people of the World Wide Web. So it is a Sunday, it is a weekend, and this is normally a movie review time, but as the title would show, that is not the case. This is a discussion on nostalgia. So people who don't know, or if you do, just to clarify this point, as I will be discussing this subject, nostalgia is when you have memories of something from your past that you kind of have an emotional connection to. Totally understandable. We all grow up through life. We all have connections and stuff like this. And this is, I wanted to have this discussion. And it kind of links back to Saturday's video that we were seeing. So Superman. So we have the new Superman movie out. I can see it is doing quite well as of recording of this video. I think it is made like 5-10 million more than its budget. Obviously it says it had a marketing campaign of 100 million. If that is essentially the case, it still needs a lot to do. It says profits will be down 50% in the following week, so it will probably make all of its money back by the second week out. It is what it is. And the reason why I wanted to talk about nostalgia, because obviously we are in this realm of it is a very seesaw of combinations. There are a lot of people who love it, there are a lot of people who hate it. And the main reason that I see of the hate or the people not liking it, there are always, or in a lot of cases now, obviously until my review comes out, I don't read reviews. So when I'm recording this, I haven't watched people's online reviews. I've seen little snippets that have come up on Facebook and stuff that I've not been able to avoid. In this day and age, that's just unavoidable. And stuff on IMDb when I go through bonus stuff, and this is the little bits that I've seen of what I'm using this discussion to do. But obviously from what I see, a lot of them who don't like it, they are comparison, they should have had like Snyder back into it, which I addressed in that sort of movie. There are people going, well, you'll never beat Christopher Reeve. And the reason why this then kind of opened up the mindset and the door of this one of, that a lot of people in the fandom, because fandom is a big thing, comics been around, I think Superman's been around for 90 years, grew up with Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve, you were brought up with what is essentially the first live action on-screen cinema Superman. There was only one Superman before hit TV series, and there was a few cartoons and stuff. So you essentially, Christopher Reeve, he's on the big screen. You have one or two Supermen, or you have one Superman before an animated version. So this one definitely stands out. And then when you grow up, obviously the way our minds mature is essentially as when you are a movie lover and you grow up, obviously when you start watching movies at a young age, which a lot of us do and stuff like that, this is kind of your foundation of the movies you watch. As that collection grows, it gets diluted. So obviously, and I usually saying to me, growing up, I watched Back to the Future. I watched it quite a few times when I was a kid. It was probably the only trilogy I ever watched as a child, and I have fond memories of that, and that's why one of the reasons why it's my favourite trilogy. Now, obviously, now I'm movies. I've watched thousands upon thousands, it might even be tens of thousands of movies. So rather from being grown up and watching Back to the Future, and that was probably in like the first 100 films I'd ever watched, to now having watched 10 times to maybe 100 times that many movies, that yes, I will have that nostalgia for Back to the Future, but a lot of the new movies, because I've seen so many, their kind of ranking or viewing is very diluted. And when you probably would, and if you took like the modern day audience, or somebody who wasn't a big movie, who stepped back and compared these movies in different time periods, i.e. modern day now, because people have different thoughts and feelings, and there are different subject matters, and everything that becomes apparent within this kind of certain decade that we're in, it just is how humans evolve, so to speak, or human behavior changes. And they don't necessarily see it that way. Young kids today won't know what Back to the Future is. There's a good chance that a lot of them, probably like 10 or under, have no idea, and may never have no idea what Back to the Future is and not know it. That's just because what they're exposed to. But the reason why I bring up this whole nostalgia thing is that can this be a good thing and can it be a bad thing? And this is kind of the whole point of this discussion. Now, for me, obviously, I count nostalgia as a good thing because it's memories. It reminds you of stuff from your childhood and stuff from your growing up. And there are a lot of bad things in this world. And I think, and as you will see from this channel, I always try to be as positive as you can on stuff to the best of my abilities. So from that side, I do love nostalgia. Nostalgia obviously does bring back, and it does impact on newer stuff. And I use Stranger Things, as you will see here, obviously based off the 80s and stuff of years I was growing up, so people can gravitate towards that. Features like record players, little cassette players that you'd have your hand. None of the kids in it even knew what that was at the time of filming. But the problem it also leads is it's like a double-edged sword. Because I grew up with this and these were the early movies that I experienced and I have this emotional attachment, we then start going, well, this is the best version of this movie. And then something new could come along and it may be different and it may be slightly aimed at a different audience. But we're in this online community of what is YouTube, what is Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, all this stuff where people are like, oh no, it's not as good as Christopher Reeve. And it's like, well, you can't, it's people's personal opinion. Everything is subjective. But for the longevity of movies and the world, I think people sometimes need to step a little bit backwards. I get it. When I was, one of the stories that my mum always tells me at my granddad's house, when I was 2, I'd jump on the back of the sofa and I'd try to fly. Now, obviously, that would have been 1984. So it would have been the first Superman movie I would have watched at some point as a young kid or been exposed to be able to do that, because there was anything else around like that. So that would have been kind of my first one. But growing up, for me, my first proper Superman was Dean Cain from the TV series. It's just what I was exposed to. It's just what I liked. It was me coming into my teenage years, and I enjoyed the themes and everything else of it. And I thought it was a great series. Dean Cain is not everybody's first choice. It's probably not a lot of people's choice, but I did like him for what it is. But because of who I am, I can take that emotional attachment and the nostalgia side of things and put it to one side and go, well, let's look at this from this perspective, not, well, this is my Superman. It doesn't matter who people introduced nowadays, who knew, and it's funny because you get these cycles that we have this new Superman, and there's a lot of people like, oh, he's, and he's rubbish, he's not as good, Zack Snyder's one is good. But if you rewind probably 5 years when we had Henry Cavill, there was a lot of slack that Henry Cavill got for being Superman. Brandon Routh before that did Superman. A lot of people didn't like that, which is why it didn't go any further than that. For whatever reason, I could probably pull out all the comments from the internet and try and dissect it as much as I can. But it seems that we have like the first iteration of people's nostalgia. They stick with it. Every new iteration, people like bombing it, and and it's kind of, it changes the perspective of everything, because it's like for every new iteration, someone doesn't like it. They then go back and go, well, that's it. And I'll use a prime example, and I will hold my hand of a victim in this, and AJ and Matt watching this will know exactly what it is. We went to all watch the latest version of Indiana Jones. Was it last year in London? Massive cinema. It was a nice experience, nice being with the guys, nice watching a film. Wasn't the greatest of film, but all of us come out of that and went, well, that was not a very good movie. Crystal Skull, which was rated as a really bad movie after the original Indiana Joneses, now everyone's like, well, actually, that's not a too bad movie. And it's like, we then take this as a comparison of, we have these 5 films and go, there's good, rubbish, absolutely rubbish. Okay, well, if that's absolutely rubbish, and when this is average, then, and go back, and you don't realize how nostalgia and other stuff manipulates you on what your interpretations are. And the reason why I talk about, fandom and nostalgia and stuff like this of having one is, and this is kind of big story, and I bang on this point all the time, so apologies if people are sick of me hearing it. Is we are in a very pinnacle time in regards to the cinema world. So I think cinema more or less has been around. I think it's for. I haven't looked this up, so if I've got this wrong, and people are saying it is about the best part of 100 years. I think it's around the 1920s is when we had the first sort of movies. Now, when movies came around, they were in their infancy. People were new, experiencing. It was exciting. People went to them. Now, all of these people that did this paved the way for what we have now. They didn't know that then because there was nothing before it. There was, they had like it was moving pictures. It was like the first kind of iteration of movies, and obviously it went from black and white, and then I think 40s, 50s, it went to color and all this stuff, and you have all these developments, which is great. Um, because movies expanded, they started to get popular. And obviously, when you get the 50s, the 60s, moving into the 70s, obviously, then you have Star Wars. This is when the movie boom exploded. People loved it. There was no streaming, there was nothing online and stuff like this. Most people who grew up in this day and age now, who were around probably my era, so in their 40s, 50s, 60s, they would have at some point in their life been to the cinema and had an experience and gone, I really like that movie, really, it was good, it was great, because of seeing this, and they held loads of nostalgia movies there, and there was not as an abundance of movies or stuff around. We didn't understand that at the time. We just appreciated it for what it is. We weren't looking to the future. We weren't looking into the past. Unfortunately, now with a lot of people blame COVID. I don't think it was just COVID. Have been an avid movie person for many, many years. Like a Cineworld member for the best part of 15, 20 years. I already saw a decline in people wanting to go see films. I don't think films have progressively got worse, but they've only got worse in the fact that in the day and age, in the 90s, you had 50 to 100 movies come out. There was probably like 50 to 100 shows. We live in a world now with streaming that I think it was last year was like 550 films. 5 to 600 films and 5 to 600 series are produced every year worldwide. Now that is so much content that, as I say, it floods kind of what is on there. And yeah, say when you go from like 100 movies to 500 movies, obviously the content that you're never going to get great movies. There are formulaic movies. There are a lot of stuff that is pumped out. There are a lot of factors that are, control this, like movie producers and stuff like this. Like they have targets, you have to reach by this, you have to stick to this money one. They had these back in the day, but people took chances on it. They don't get to do it in this day and age. And essentially it produces what we see. But as I say at this era, look, I would say cinema essentially is struggling. People do class it. And I can't show it because I'm filming this on my phone, and the phone is the worst culprit of this. And I will explain this, and I have a big story to go in this, and this is going to be a long video, so I do apologise to everybody watching. I'd be saying boring for you. So essentially, I say we are now in an era where a lot of people are sick of films. A lot of people say, I don't want to wait that month to see it on in the cinema. I would rather wait to watch it at home. And I bring up this point, and it's all, and they say like, you have all these movies that you have nostalgia for, but we are not giving current movies the time of day. Sometimes, not all of them. I say there are a lot of rubbish movies out there. Even I agree to that. I go to cinema, I'm back to it, and the reason, is it's the environment that you get is to be submerged within the film that you are watching, and I'll elaborate on that bit in a little bit, and that's what my story goes to. But obviously, we are in an era now where, I would like to have, I hope to have children in the foreseeable future. I would like my children and my children's children to experience exactly what I did, to have gone to the cinema to see films at a young age, whether it be what Disney have when that is gone, whether it's something else, whether they grow up and take their family to the cinema. I'm not saying it's for everyone. I'm not saying you have to go every week. I'm not saying you have to buy popcorn and everything else. A lot of cinemas you can take a lot of stuff into. You can get deals for Amazon stuff at Odeon. It isn't as expensive. Yes, it will be some time consuming, but it is something nice to do where it puts you in an environment where you are immersed in a movie, where you actually get to appreciate it. And that's something I see myself of, that I've loved movie all this time, and the only reason I've loved movies is because people have gone to it. But because of current times and the world and stuff like that, I want my children to enjoy what I have and their children, and the only way we do it is by supporting stuff like this and going to the cinema and doing this sort of stuff. Yes, it is the fact that, you know, some people it might be like, oh, the cinema's like an hour and a half away, or there's a lot of hassle and stuff. I'm not saying you have to go all the time. Go once a month. Go, you know, go on a date with your wife. Take you out of the house. Put your phones down, because we all sit in a room at most evenings watching stuff and we're on our phones, and this is where it gets. So we'll rewind and we'll say about the focus thing. So, you know, that is why I like going to cinema, because I submerge myself into it, and then this goes in the story. So for everyone sitting at home, even watching this on the phone or watching, whenever you watch TV, whenever you watch movies, you are watching on your phone. You are not concentrating on what you are doing. We all joke about like women can multitask and men can't. If you do not pay full attention for the period that you are watching something, you will lose it. So say, yes, you can get distracted when you're on a phone, and you can watch an hour program or a 2 hour movie, and you could only have paid attention to 75% of it, and you can kind of fill in the holes and think you have enjoyed it. But what you actually don't realize is that your brain doesn't like cognitively lock on to everything that's going on, and that's why you have this kind of separation of something. And it's why, like, yeah, oh yeah, you know, Back to the Future, I love it. I've seen it so many times. You can put it on, and yeah, I do get up and go to the toilet. I do make a cup of tea, and I do get distracted. And I keep getting sidetracked. So essentially what it is when I used to work, or where I work now, when I started it, they have a car scheme. So you could go on this. What you had to do to meet the requirements of this is you had to go to a special driving course. This was in Silverstone. I was taken to Silverstone with a load of people I work with. Most of them don't work for the company anymore now. And then this woman came out. She'd been 20 years for driving instructors, and essentially it was a sit down to discuss of how you drive a car, distractions and everything, and how you need to focus on something, how you need to keep your mind active. And the scenario she used, and she always used this story, and this always has resonated with me. And I try to use this when I'm driving something, because people don't realize it. So essentially this was the early days of mobile phones and stuff like this, and they had this simulator. And she explains this story that she had done recently and says, look, the reason why I teach you this is we are easily distracted as people. There are stuff where our mind does wander. Now, it can only wander for like a split second or something, and you could drive from A to B and feel like you have been in control. But little minor things distract you can actually have massive consequences. And she says, like, I was in this scenario, I was in this car, she had done this app, so she got into this actual car that was on this like CG kind of, had a screen in front of it, a screen side of it, so it simulated a road, and she would drive around and indicate, and essentially they were doing tests. As I say, this is before mobile phones. So what they did is they did this test. She drove this course. The course was always different. On one of these courses, one of the people came along, sat down, and basically talked to her while she was driving along. She drove, did the 5-10 minute journey, and basically by the end of it, she, you know, this person, she was like, great, I think that was good. I did quite well. You know, it was a little distracting, but I think it did it. And then what I essentially did, she got out of the car, and then they replayed this 10-minute video of her journey. Essentially, because this bloke was talking to her, she ran down a digital child on this road. And obviously you would have physically realized it, but obviously they didn't simulate that. But essentially what it goes to show, and it says that the mind works of, you need all your sights and senses focused on one specific thing for driving. When someone even talks to you, like talking on the phone or something like that, is it distracts you, and it distracts certain points. Obviously your mind fills in those gaps, and obviously she didn't have it. And she said, look, this is why you need to focus on something, and this is why stuff is a distraction. So as I say, this was a 10-minute journey, and in it, she didn't even notice, and this had occurred. And I know you might say it's a simulator, it's fake, it's nothing. This, you know, this was her job. This is what she was paid for. She'd been in that job for 20 odd years, and that is something before we had proper mobile phones, which is why I try not to really speak on the phone while I'm in the car and stuff, because it is such a bigger distraction of people. And even when my wife's in there, I talk, even my wife's gone, pay attention, you've not done this. And you know, these are like 5-10 minute journeys or 15-minute journeys. When we sit down for like a 2-hour movie, a 3-hour movie, if you're on your phone, you are not paying attention. You know, I'm always getting up and rewinding movies and stuff because I miss so much. And you might miss little bits, and you might, okay, I watched a story, I roughly got, you know, that it's a person, they've had some bad luck in the end, like great, yeah, it's an all right story, you go away and you're like, actually there was a lot of key elements you weren't paying attention to unless you didn't immerse yourself. And that's why cinema is such a great thing, just because it forces you to, and not in a bad way, but you don't have those distractions. You immerse yourself in the movie, you get to enjoy it, whether you come at it and go, oh, that was a pile of rubbish, or that was great. Unless you put yourself in those situations, you just then fall into this spiral of, at home, you watch movies and you will, the more and more you expand, the more and more movies you get, the newer movies that you don't have those relationships to and nostalgia and everything else, you're like, oh, this is just even worse. This is just even worse. Oh, this is absolutely horrendous. I'll put something I've watched that I'm nostalgic for. You will act the same. You'll probably be distracted, say 30% on your phone. You'll get up, go to the toilet, make a drink, talk to someone else and stuff like this. But at the end of the movie, because you have this nostalgic link and you know what's gone on, you're like, oh, that's still a great movie. I'm like, but is it that great of a movie that you really enjoyed it? You actually only spent 70% paying attention to what was on the screen. And this is a kind of and I use nostalgic as a thing, and I think I just want people to actively be aware. As I say, art is subjective, movie is subjective. You can have whatever thoughts and feelings on films you choose to be. I'm not pressing you for that. I'm just making people a little bit aware where your nostalgia of what you like and what you affect, and not being at least a little open-minded of how society works a day and how we are distracted. If you don't encourage people to watch films, you know, because potentially a lot of young kids don't want to go to cinema, or even not cinema, go to watch new films as it is. And if you keep saying they're all shit and they're all boring, you know, you essentially, probably half the time, if you watch it at home, you're not really paying attention to it. So are you really giving it the time of day that it's due? And B, as I say, I think we need to be a little bit foresight of all these movie lovers that we are helping to kill the movie industry. That, you know, I mean, I feel that the cinemas and stuff, it will die out 5-10 years time, and that there will be a resurgence. I hope there is a resurgence. I will do my best in my lifetime for my friends and my family to encourage movies and stuff like this. I know that's not for everybody, but I just want people to kind of understand that this is where we are going. And to take account of, as much as you hold stuff in nostalgia and that, and you know, it's not, and even if you take another step back from that, I am not saying that new movies are boring. I am not saying there isn't, you know, like fatigue on movies with like superhero movies. The thing, and I don't necessarily say it's a fatigue movie, I think there just is quality of newer films and stuff isn't as great. And I mean, when people say like, oh, we get superhero fatigue and stuff like this, and yes, some of the newer stuff isn't that great, but then you have all this previous nostalgia for the earlier movies that can and may impact your thoughts on the newer movies, because I say there's a lot more to do. But then when you go and sit back and watch some of these movies, like some of the early movies, a lot of us, there are ones that leading up to the first Avengers movie, you know, the first few 4 movies, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of Captain America 1. I know that gets a lot of slack. You know, there are several films throughout the first Avengers kind of phase, so to speak, that I don't think are really that good. 4-2 is a definite one. It didn't do that great, or I don't know many people that even like it. But when people then sit there and go like on the later ones, you know, oh, the later ones are really, really crap. It's like, well, actually in quality and stuff, it's not probably that great from some of the early stuff. We just have more of a nostalgia towards it. Um, you know, and James Gunn has set it up, and I know I'm using a lot of Superman references and him, that essentially there is a lot of lazier writing. There is a lot, and that could be partly because the studios not allowing people to go outside of their wheelhouse and stuff like this. So I'm not necessarily blaming it totally down to me, but it is, there aren't great write-ins and there ain't great stuff in these movies, and that is part of the lack of it. It's not necessarily that it's fatigue of these sort of movies. It's just the quality, and the people behind it aren't producing the quality they should be. And as I said, 100 movies, say you had 200 writers on it, you had 100 directors on it and stuff like this. You now times that by 5. Is that quality not going to then get diluted? 500 directors, you're telling me that all of those are going to be amazing. You might have, say, 5 who will produce amazing movies. Anyway, so that is my talk. I know it went off a few tangents of nostalgia. I am not saying about nostalgia. I just think it is a double-sided sword. I think it is good to remember stuff and to incorporate that, but I do feel you do need to sometimes step away, and that even though something is nostalgic for me, it shouldn't impact a newer version of something or a newer type of movie. And you should give it the time and that it's due, because obviously something you watched as a child, Back to the Future, there was no phones, there was no distractions. I watched all of the movies, 5.5 hours worth, immersed myself and enjoyed it for what it was. At least give the time of day to the newer movies, even if you do think it's rubbish. But anyway, that has been my long discussion on nostalgia. What are your thoughts and feelings? Let me know in the comments down below. This is maybe something that I will take with the lads in a live stream coming soon, if there is enough response. Otherwise, I shall see you in the next one.